Hello and welcome to 9 to 5 Wellness Show. Today I have a very special guest who is going to discuss the exhaustion escape, ending burnout for you. And she is Dr. Sandra Lewis. She's a clinical psychologist and personal energy strategist. Dr. Sandra works with organizations and people who want to relieve burnout and reignite their capacity to make an impact that matters to them. As a yoga nidra teacher and qigong practitioner, Dr. Sandra blends research and ancient wisdom into practical strategies to sustain leadership and impact. She is also the author of the book Life in Four-Part Harmony: Get Everything in Your Life to Work with Everything Else in Your Life. I am super excited to discuss the exhaustion escape with Dr. Sandra today. Welcome to the show, Dr. Sandra.
Thank you so much, Aisha. It's great to be here with you. Great to be here with you.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the topic because we are seeing an increase in the burnout rate exponentially. The burnout rate has exponentially risen, especially after COVID-19.
Mhm.
But I believe it was still there. We just didn't recognize it before. So I'm super excited to really dive into this topic with you. One of the things that keeps coming up with my corporate clients is that they believe that they have to perform or work certain number of hours to get the project done. So in a way, they're putting a lot of pressure on themselves.
Mhm. Mhm.
So why do you think we put this pressure on ourselves? Why are we pushing so hard?
Yes. So interestingly, I think that there's two parts to that. There's the one thing that came to me when you said the pressure. That often happens when we're already stressed and we don't quite see a way out. Now, interestingly, when we're stressed and we don't quite see a way out, we don't think we have the resources to manage something, then what will we do? We will push harder. We'll just go harder. Can we go even a little bit? If I push harder, I can do this, because that's one of the things we learn about work is that the harder you work, right? If you just push, you'll get it done. So when we're stressed sometimes and we get stuck in that, we get stuck in a loop where, oh my God, it's not happening. It's not happening. Let me go harder. Let me go harder. I'm not sure I can do it. Let me go harder. Let me go harder. We can just get stuck right there in that loop. And we never get to the point, even if we finish the project, we never actually, our body can't settle, because at that point, our nervous system's so aroused, we settle a little, but we not ever get quite down to that place where it's like, okay, the project's done. I can take a break now. We're literally so aroused, we actually sometimes just jump into the next thing. The other thing that came to my mind as I was listening to you is how we often disconnect productivity from wellness.
Mhm.
Productivity and wellness often are seen as, maybe we treat them like they're competing with each other. I can't be productive if I'm taking a walk, or I can't be productive if I'm meditating. I need to do these things. I don't have time to sit. Truth is that when and often, right, we'll see somebody who's very productive and we'll think they're great because they're so productive. This is how the higher achiever person or the high performing person can kind of hide. They're like, you'll miss their burnout because they are doing so many things. They're just like, this is that sometimes that problem solving person that everybody goes to and they say, hey, they always get things done. Let's go to them. So, but when you disconnect productivity and wellness, then you don't see how these two things actually complement each other.
Mhm.
When you take that time out just to give your brain a break, particularly if you're trying to do some creative work, you try to give your brain a break and you step away. You nurture yourself, give yourself some time to recharge. When you come back, you actually have more possibility, right? You have more of your thinking capacity, your emotional capacity, your physical capacity available to involve in this thing. So the pushing I think results from two things. The one is we get stuck in a part of our stress cycle where we feel like things aren't going to work out and we feel like we got to push harder. The other is that we disconnect productivity from well-being, and we really want to make them part.
Right, right. So I'm so glad you touched upon the relationship between productivity and well-being. Then what about excellence, though? All the top athletes and people who are performing at, really top level.
Hmm.
What do you say? Like, I'm sure, I mean, from what I've read, in the books and research, is that they're putting exponential amount of hours, like
Hmm.
to gain that excellence. So
Hmm.
how can we connect the two then?
And they're also taking breaks. So, if somebody is a runner, and depending upon what kind of race they need to run, there are going to be days when they run slower because they want to build stamina. There are going to be days when they run faster because they need to get to the finish line quicker, right? If you're a 100-yard dash runner, people who excel have a rhythm for how to help themselves grow a little excellence, a little bit at a time. If you try to push your body from 0 to being at 60 in a short time, your body's going to say, I can't do that. But when you excel, when you're really in your excellent zone, you've learned where's the edge and where could you give just a little bit more that you would expand a little, you'd grow a little, but not collapse. So there's this rhythm of exertion and rest. And literally, people who write books about energy management, that's one of the things they talk about is we need recovery time. We need recharge time. So during your day, if you really want to be at your excellence, right? If you want to build excellence, then there has to be space for you to recover and to sort of look at what you're doing and kind of think, what do I need now to get to this next place I want to be? The other thing that comes to my mind is when you said the word excellence, first book that popped into my head was Powered by Feel. And literally they interviewed right, these authors, Clausen and Newberg interviewed people who they considered excellence, right, in their excellence zone. These are people who are excelling as surgeons, artists, athletes, all the things that they were doing in the world. And here's one, this is my favorite section of the book, talks about how when people ignore how they feel, I'm going to give you two actually favorite sections. When people ignore how they feel, it's really a formula for mediocrity. They're not paying attention to their energy. They will just do what they have to do to get something done. And they call that the formula for mediocrity. You can't be in your excellent zone if you're just doing what you have to do to get it done.
Right.
What they say is they learned from these athletes and surgeons and artists, people from varied walks of life, that excellence had to do with them feeling like their work was more of a noun than a verb, actually, right? And that their work
Right.
was where their work was really like love. To everybody else watching them, it looks like work. But if
Right.
you ask them about it, it feels like love.
Right.
What happens when people burn out often is that we've actually lost the connection with what we love about what we do. And I can tell you that from personal experience. I was like, I don't even love my job anymore. I don't want it. I don't want to do it. Right.
Right.
And when you get to that place, now you've lost the actual thing that drives excellence, the love for what you do. And it's so much of a relationship between you and your work. But now you got this fracture in your relationship with your work. So
Yeah.
you can't drive your excellence because you lost the love.
Yeah. 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 And losing the love is a big deal because
Big deal.
if you're not enjoying it, I mean, you're almost losing your purpose for
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
For that job, for that career, for an athlete, for that sport, and you can't go too long in that
Hmm.
way. So, thank you for explaining that. And I do want to say. I agree with you. You gave a good example of being a runner because I'm a runner.
Oh.
We and yeah, I only train 20% of the week at a hard intensity,
Mhm.
and the 80% is at a moderate to low intensity. Like especially the long runs, people
Mhm.
don't realize that the long runs are at a very low intensity. And I have at least 2 full days of rest in
Mhm.
between. So, and those rest days are so important because that's what makes for good, productive, uh, high intensity running days.
Mm.
And it's the same for work. I suggest to my corporate clients all the time that you have to take breaks during the day too. Like, of course, you need a break at the end of the day, which is becoming hard with our hybrid environments.
Mhm.
If people are working from home, especially the uh, the lines are so blurred now between
Mhm.
our personal and work lives that
Mhm.
it's becoming hard for my clients to do that. But I emphasize that you should still have a time that you actually close your laptop and you don't go back in there to your home office at all. And the same thing during the workday, take movement breaks, take breaks that would make you productive so that you come back refreshed.
Mhm.
And subconsciously, the work is still going on in the background. Actually, you'll come back with fresher ideas, more
Mhm.
productive ideas. So, I want to touch upon this um, hybrid work environment
Mm.
that we
Yes.
have at this time.
Mhm.
I know a lot of companies are calling their employees back. And from my clients, I've heard like a mix of what they feel like, for going back. So some of my clients feel like, oh, it's really good because you know what? I'm working 14 hours a day. Like I feel like I'm never off. And then other half of my clients are like, no, we actually like working from home. We like this flexibility. We're not really sure about going back. So for them, maybe hybrid environment is the environment that they should be working in. But what are some ways that our listeners can employ, like what are some tips or strategies for them to maintain a healthy work schedule and also maintain a boundary?
Mhm. Yeah. When and I would say that even when we are full-time at a site, we still have to figure out the boundaries, particularly for people who have careers where they want to make a major impact. They want to do something. They can come home and they still can't turn it off. So we have to have ways of turning off the work. Even if we are full-time in our office and at the end of the day, we go home. If you then pick up your computer and go back on to work at 9 o'clock after you had dinner and maybe put your children to bed if you're a parent, now you still have never turned off. You haven't literally shifted out of work. You're still at work. The way people, I would suggest, if you are hybrid, right, and you are working at home part of the time, depending upon your space, you need a way to say work is over. For some people, it works to have a very physical way of putting their computer somewhere that they're not going to open it. They shut it down, they turn it off. I've even read articles about families who, at a certain time of night, they actually turn off the internet in their home so that they're not accessing any kind of outside. They're not emailing anything that's going to come. It comes the next morning when the internet comes back on.
That's smart. That's
Yeah.
very smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can if you feel that you need that level of demarcation, there are many ways you can do that in your home. Uh, we're in the Northeast area, and people who live in New York City or maybe live in a small apartment, a studio or something, everything is pretty much almost in the same space. So how do you start to create some differences between space? Sometimes that's just you got a box that's your where you're going to take this and you're going to put, or maybe there's a drawer where you sit to do your work. You take your laptop, you put it in a drawer. Maybe you cover your screen with a cloth. Like, okay, screen is closed, everything, work is closed. Now I'm off to do whatever. So these simple things that help you to say, I've changed from one thing to the other, that's like the what in psychology we would call like a discriminative stimulus. Oh, this now means I can go home. Right now I'm home. I'm not at work anymore. So sometimes we need those things. But the
It's a
big,
cue. It's a
yes,
cue
cue.
to
Exactly.
our physical, like almost like when we see a cue, like
Yeah.
it's a visual cue to our brain
Yeah.
that, oh, we are off.
Yeah.
This is it. This is the end of the workday.
Yeah.
So
And
I
I
love
also,
that.
yeah, I also suggest changing your clothes, right? Like even
Ah,
if you've been online all day and you've had on your nice like shirt, right? Because nobody can see you except from up, right? But maybe now you change your shirt. Maybe now you say, right, you put on actually your favorite shirt, your favorite lounge around shirt, or you also maybe you leave the house. You go outside, you walk around, and I'm coming back, I'm coming home, right, for rest. So we
yeah,
need these different things because somewhere inside of you has to be a shift. The outside has to be a cue to shifting. What
yeah,
is it that you want to feel when you're at rest at home? Now, often people, right, they leave work, but then it's time to make dinner. There's all these things that have to happen in the house. So there has to be some transition for you. Like
yeah,
I'm a fan of transition. Yoga nidra teacher, fan of transition.
yeah.
Fan of the space between things, honoring the space that allows you to put one thing down and pick up another one.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Yes, yes, I agree. Space is so important, so important. And all the strategies that you gave to incorporate that space, I'm sure they're super helpful, going to be super helpful for our listeners. And I do it myself too, like the walking part. I just
Mhm.
shut the computer down, go out for a walk. It's good for your health and it's good for your mental health too, and to create the boundaries.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, okay, there is an expectation from people to do a certain amount of work, to put in a certain number of hours at work, or else you're not going to get that next promotion. I've been told by many of my clients. Um, I feel like we have normalized exhaustion in our society.
Mhm.
What do you think about that?
Oh, for sure. We've normalized exhaustion and many professions normalize it. Just, I mean, the first profession that comes to mind because I've spent so much time working in hospitals and medical and mental health settings is are those medical professions where people can end up with an 80-hour week. And that's just expected that you would do an 80-hour week. I even went once to this is really funny, but I went to uh, a networking event where the person who was speaking was a woman who was a C-level executive in a company that that made mattresses, and
Yeah.
they were really talking about how this mattress helps people sleep so well, why it's the right mattress for people, why you're going to have the best night, you're going to have the best rest. And she was just talking about how many hours she works a week and how she's so willing to put, and I'm like, so you're literally marketing how to rest well, but you're telling me that your life is this one where you're driving so hard that sometimes you don't sleep yourself. So there's an irony, right? That many of
Yes.
us know we need to rest, know we need to take a break, but there are these messages either from our profession or maybe our families or maybe some other issue that says you have to do this thing. Or even in the company you work in, that person who worked the 60-hour week got two promotions. You're working, the 45 or 50-hour week and you haven't gotten one yet. So if you go up to 70, you think you'll get it, right? So that's a company message. This is where we start to see how companies and professions can begin to redefine the norms.
Mm.
So, and every person could be different. Some people might actually be better working um, from 10 to 7 p.m.
Yeah.
than 9 to 5 or 8 to 4, right? So, right there.
Yeah.
So, the messages have to be, this is where people, I think, have to negotiate some with their organizations and say, we need some boundaries around this. We need some clarity. It seems that we have this message we can't turn off. If you can't turn off, you end up with um, a team of people who are too highly aroused, right? And we
Yes.
know, right, when you're too highly aroused, you're getting to that point where your body's just going to shut itself down.
Yeah.
So this is one of those questions where we as people have to know that we can turn ourselves off, we can take breaks, but we have to invite our organizations to make some decisions about what are the expectations that are reasonable.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. So true. I think it has to do a lot with the organizational culture,
Mhm.
like, and it has to come from top, right? The expectations that are we are setting for our employees to perform and maybe get that next promotion. So yeah, if we can be flexible there and also understand that yes, productivity is important, but if we give enough time for the to the employees to rest,
Mhm.
they're going to be more productive. I think that's the key point, right? That we want them to be productive, but not at the cost of their health and well-being. So, prioritizing well-being becomes so important because the better the person's health is, and the better they feel, uh, then they're going to be more productive. So, okay, this all of this that we talked about, this is like very visible, right? That the burnout symptoms are visible, people are working hard. I know a few of my clients who would stay at work till like 3 a.m. at night.
Yeah.
Right? Like this is visible symptom of somebody who's overworking,
Yeah.
stressed out, and burnt out. But you talk about this often that burnout can also hide in plain sight. So, how can burnout happen when everything seems okay?
Yeah. That's one of the ways. When you have that person who's like I have a friend who's also like a VP at a company, and she talked about having, one of her team members, she looked at the email message and the email was sent at like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. Even
Yeah,
having come to the office and discovered that this person had stayed there pretty much all night to work.
yeah,
So that is burnout happening in plain sight. You know what I'm saying? It's like right here is somebody who's adopted a pattern that is not sustainable. So that's one of the ways. You watch people adopting patterns that are not sustainable. If
mhm,
if they're doing things that are not nobody can come to work at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, work all day. I don't even know if this person took time off for dinner. We have no idea. And then sometime at 3 o'clock in the morning, they're still at their office. It's not a sustainable pattern. So
no,
that's burnout happening in plain sight. One of the things to notice is what are the patterns that you see in people's work? And
okay,
and just also something you said a moment ago about how the companies have to, take some action around setting these boundaries. It just popped into my head as you were talking that your company has a mission. Your company has a goal.
yes,
There's some impact you want to make in the industry that you're in or for the customers that you're serving. There's something you want to be different
yeah,
because of what you offer in the world.
yeah,
It's really important that you think about how each of the people who are team members are a part of that mission and how their desires, their values, their sense of purpose match with this mission. If
yeah,
you start to match those things, you start to see how these things or how my purpose overlaps with this work, then you also start to see how valuable I am to your mission. And
yes,
you want to cultivate me in a way that is sustainable, that helps me to grow and also helps me to grow the mission. So there's something that has to happen that's at this deeper core level value, purpose. You mentioned culture. But what drives culture has to be something deeper, like values, has to
Yes.
be this mission, this difference you want to make. I, I don't think that anyone necessarily goes to a job. Sometimes we'll take a job because it was the one we could get at the time. But
Yeah.
even in that state, we know we need the job because we value our family's well-being. And this is the best option now for what I want to create for my family. And I can do a good job at this, right? I
Yeah.
can bring some value here, and this will bring some value to my family.
Yeah.
Many of us choose a career
Yeah.
because there is something that is in us that we feel like we can bring through this work.
Yeah.
If we're in a place where we're not being valued, it's being suggested that the 8-hour week is what we want out of you,
Yeah.
then you're not even suggesting that you value me as a person. You're suggesting you value the things I can get done.
Yes.
But there's
Yes.
no getting those things done without me.
Wonderful. Yes. Yes. So wonderful. That's it. That is the gist of it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Aligning the value of your employees and team with your organization's mission. That's what it comes down to. And understanding that on the other end of the computer screen is a human being who has a family, who has friends, who has relationships outside of the workplace. And they are also contributing to this person's life. So,
absolutely.
are we supporting this person holistically or not?
Right,
Right.
right.
So, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Sandra, what's your one question reset? Like a simple solution for reset?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh my, let me tell you, this is one of my favorite strategies. Because sometimes when we get stuck in that place where we're just like we're pushing and pushing, or we know like we're feeling so stressed and we can't quite get out of it, we need one question to ask ourselves in that moment that will help us shift. Because stuck, right? What's the antidote to stuck? You got to have a little shift, right? Like if your car, like we live in the Northeast, people have gotten their tires stuck. Well, what do? They rock the car, right? So you got to just give it a little nudge and then they'll go. So, so it's like the one question reset is like our little nudge that helps us get out of that being stuck in that stressful place. And that could be something as simple as, what does the situation need in this moment? What does this situation need? It may not be something I can do. It may be something that someone I could call somebody else and they could actually make something happen.
Yeah.
It could be something like I had a mentor who used to say, "What's mine to do?" Because
Yes.
yeah, because so many times we're actually caught up in what we think people want us to do, but what
Yes.
really is ours to do. Now, my favorite one is, what does this have to do with who I came to the world to be?
Hmm. Let's say that again for the listeners. I just love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is
What
wonderful.
yeah, what does this have to do with who I came to the world to be?
Mm,
Because
yeah.
now, right? Now I just moved into my purpose, my values. How does this work I'm doing connect with that? And once I can see that, then I can say, well, what is the smallest step I can take now to move toward what really matters to me? And I give myself permission to take small steps because they can make a big difference. So we don't need to think that we have to do a huge thing. A huge thing comes from small things that get you there.
Yeah. That's key. That's key in the way that first, just like you said, is this aligned with my values?
Mhm.
Is this aligned with my purpose of life? You know,
Mm.
and then finding out that it could be a minute step and never discount the minute step that you take because it adds up. You might not see it for in the time being, but in the long run, because we are in it for the long game, right? So it's a
Mhm.
long game. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Life is a marathon. Living your purpose is a marathon. Every small step adds up.
Mhm.
and leads to a big result.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then understanding what can you control, and like you said, can you ask someone for help, right? I think it's the hardest thing to do, though. It's the hardest thing to do, asking someone for help,
Mhm.
but recognizing that you need help
Mhm.
and there is someone out there who can help you is so powerful.
Yeah.
And it's, I think, the ultimate antidote to, burnout that we have right now.
Mhm.
So, Dr. Sandra, I know you help so many busy professionals and corporations to overcome burnout. Where can our listeners find you?
You can definitely connect with me on LinkedIn, and my website is life in four, the number four, partharmony.com. You can always reach me through there as well. Those are the two easiest ways to get to me.
Great. Yeah, I'm going to post your LinkedIn profile and also your website
Okay.
in our show notes so everybody can reach Dr. Sandra. Dr. Sandra is wonderful. I can vouch for her work. She has helped me so many times. We belong to a speaker group, and it's always wonderful to talk to her. I get so many nuggets of wisdom when
Thank
I'm
you.
stressed out and I'm overworking. So definitely reach out to her. This was wonderful, Dr. Sandra. I
Thank
just
you.
enjoyed our conversation so, so, so much. Thank you for coming on our
Oh,
show.
thank you. Thank you
Thank
for having me.
you.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Listeners, have a good day. Bye.